Assalamu alaikum friends. Today we have to talk about a very important topic, and that is how to qualify an MPhil PhD English written admission test. This exam happens to be one of the most important exams for the students who complete their 16th year education and intend to join graduate studies or higher studies, that is MPhil or PhD. Unfortunately, large number of students they fail this test or they fail to achieve that merit which is required for the admission. So there are multiple reasons. So let's see how we can help these students or these candidates. uh, we have to keep in mind that there are very broad variations. What are these broad variations? First of all, let's talk about MPhil. If you are interested to be admitted to some MPhil course, so for that the prerequisite is that you have to be GATE qualified, and that is GATE general, not GATE subject, and plus university entrance test. So this GATE general is offered by NTS. You can qualify this GATE general exam through NTS, National Testing Service. Uh, or some universities, rather most of the universities, they also offer their own GATE test. If you haven't already qualified this test, GATE general, so you have the opportunity that you can take this exam along with your university entrance test, and you can qualify. You can take both the exams at the same time. So this is an option for you. There are certain technicalities which we would be discussing later, but this is just I'm telling you that there are some variations. For PhD, you need obviously GATE subject. Again, that is offered by National Testing Service. That exam is conducted by National Testing Service, NTS, plus university entrance test. And here also, universities also conduct GATE subject. So if you aren't GATE qualified previously, so you have the opportunity to take GATE subject test along with university entrance test. However, here we have very broad variations. Some universities they have both GATE general and GATE subject tests patterned exactly on the NTS model. I mean, they offer their own GATE general and GATE subject tests, but they are exactly patterned on NTS model, whatever model National Testing Service is having. And along with that, most of the universities, as far as their own exam is concerned, whether it is for MPhil or PhD, these two examinations, they are subjective, they are not objective. However, there are variations. There are universities, those who design these tests, which are their own entrance test, exactly on the pattern of GATE. So I have come across all these variations without naming the universities, because that would involve some value judgment which I don't want to offer, because it is very ridiculous that you are modeling your university entrance test exactly on the pattern of GATE general or GATE subject, because that is a redundancy. You have already checked your candidates on those parameters. There is no need to model the university entrance test on GATE general pattern or GATE subject pattern, but unfortunately there are universities in Pakistan which are doing that. But ideally and mostly the good universities, what they are doing, they are reserving uh, objective portions, objective assessment for GATE, whether it is general or subject, because you know GATE general and GATE subject, it is altogether objective test, mostly based upon MCQs or very short answers. Therefore, they are keeping their own test exclusively for subjective assessment, which is equally essential. And another variation which I came across while I was making preparation for this video, there are some universities, they have a mix. For example, their own entrance test will be a mix of objective and subjective questions, but predominantly it would involve subjective questions. So that is why I just wanted to make it clear that there are variations, wide variations. So when you are appearing in the test or in entrance test, please do consult the practice which is being followed at that university by getting previous papers somehow, if it is possible. Um, no shortcuts, no quick fixes. Please remember these tests, which is an entry test, a milestone, a checkpoint. It is primarily designed to assess the skills and abilities which you have gained over the years in the past 16 years. Therefore, we cannot say that there are shortcuts that you can prepare, you can make preparations overnight, as it happens with our students, that they apply they apply for these courses, and once they have time, so the last week or somehow 2-3 days they would sit down to dusk and they would be preparing, but that is not the proper way to do that. So shortcuts are not available, because these tests will be assessing your knowledge with certain parameters, where you have to have good command of ideas and good comprehension of subjective portions of knowledge which you have acquired over years, and certain abilities which you have been cultivating over years, and whatever you learned, acquired during the past 16 years of education, that will somehow bear upon your performance in this test. But that doesn't mean, when I say there are no shortcuts, that doesn't mean that there are absolutely no technicalities which you should be mindful of. There are certain technicalities and guidelines. Obviously, for that purpose I am making this video. Let's move on. Well, this is the test pattern. Usually the GAT pattern, whether it is subject GAT subject or GAT general. We have quantitative reasoning around 30%, more or less variations are possible. Analytical reasoning 30%, English section 40%. And this is the pattern. By and large, this is the pattern. Let's talk about quantitative reasoning, which is a nightmare for the people who are from English language or English literature side. Quantitative reasoning, basic to slightly medium algebra and geometric equations, sets and formulas. So this is what is involved in quantitative reasoning. Basic to slightly medium algebra and geometric equations, sets and formulas. So these mathematical concepts should be clear to you in order to be successful in your quantitative reasoning in this test. So the kind of mathematics which you would be confronting, that would be basic to slightly medium, not exactly medium, slightly medium. And the concepts are algebra will be there, basic to medium, slightly medium, geometric equations would be there, sets would be there, formulas would be there. So in quantitative reasoning, you would be dealing with these basic mathematical concepts, but they are basics for mathematicians or the students of mathematics. Obviously, they are not basic for English language, English literature students. That is the reason a large number of students, even my own students, when they came across me, so this was their response, that the quantitative reasoning portion was very difficult. It was full of mathematics and that was all latent to us. We couldn't make it. We were guessing wildly. So they are right, because it is not their cup of tea. So students have to be serious while preparing for quantitative reasoning. For example, you are likely to face these questions. Look at this. If two men and three women complete a task in 8 days, and four men and five women complete a task in 12 days, then how many women are required to complete a task in a day? So you can recall your school days when you would be you were dealing with such questions. Similarly, there can be questions like, if x is equal to 13 and y is equal to 10, then what is the value of x minus y? This is apparently pretty simple. So, I mean, this is what quantitative reasoning is. That when you are reasoning quantitatively, in fact, you are reasoning mathematically, you are reasoning geometrically. Your thinking is spatial. You are thinking spatially. Algebra is there, mathematics is there, concepts are there, sets are involved. There are formulas which would help you. There are equations, and you should have to be familiar with the principle of those equations. So, I have written it here. Get some formal coaching for a month in case of being too weak in mathematics. I mean, if you are one of those people who are like me, those who are too weak in mathematics, so for such people, it is advisable that they can get some formal coaching. They can approach some good teacher for a month or so. So that would help them a lot, because obviously mathematics is a technical subject. Moving on. Analytical reasoning, another nightmare for the English language students and English literature students, that is analytical reasoning. Although it is less nightmarish than the previous quantitative reasoning, but still it has its own formidable challenge. What is analytical reasoning? Analytical reasoning assesses ability to study information and apply logic to find patterns or make inferences. So let's be clear about it. Your ability to study information and your ability to apply logic to find patterns or make inferences. So these two words are very important here. Patterns, to find patterns, that means to discover pattern, and to make inferences, that is the core of analytical reasoning. How to find patterns in a jumble, in a mosaic of ideas or information or knowledge, how to find some pattern out of that, or how to make certain inferences which are logically valid, which are analytically derived and logically valid. That is the principle of analytical reasoning. Analytical reasoning measures critical thinking and problem solving skills. So, for analytical reasoning, you have to train your mind. And remember, it is a craft as well as an art. Some people are naturally blessed with analytical reasoning, but those who aren't, they can train themselves in this craft. They can acquire competence in this. So, data may be presented in the form of written passages, graphs, tables, and shapes. Again, you can see here we are also finding the role of spatial reasoning. Spatial reasoning is very important both in quantitative reasoning and the more so in analytical reasoning. You can improve your analytical ability by practicing sample questions again and again. For example, logical puzzles. That is just, I mean, in newspapers or on internet, there are logical puzzles. So if you attempt logical puzzles, so they will help you to train your mind analytically and to find patterns and to make inferences. That will be the kind of training for you. Its notable kinds are an acceptable seating arrangement of all 6 diplomats around a table. I mean, you might have come across this question that there is a Polish diplomat, and Indian diplomat, and Pakistani diplomat, and Afghan diplomat, and American diplomat. There are all in all 6 diplomats. So, Afghan diplomat will not be comfortable with Pakistani diplomat. Pakistani diplomat will not be comfortable with Indian diplomat. A Polish diplomat will be very uncomfortable with the American diplomat. So, how to make an acceptable seating arrangement that all of them are seated comfortably, although they are having there are so many internal clashes, but in spite of that you have to think of some proper acceptable arrangement where no one is feeling uncomfortable. So here, this is your analytical reasoning. When you will be doing this, you will be involving your analytical reasoning. Moving on. Reasoning with conditional if then statements, inferring what could be true or must be true from given facts and rules. So, this is another very important set of questions in analytical reasoning, that if this and this is the situation, then what would follow? I mean, if this here is a situation or a set of conditions or a set of you can say certain conditionalities. So if this is the situation, then what could be true or must be true? Or here is a set of facts. So given these set of facts, what could be true or what must be true? So these are also analytical questions. You can practice analytical reasoning, analytical questions. They are available on internet. You can just Google, write analytical reasoning questions, and you will come across plenty of such questions. Lastly, questions usually involve a series of diagram or picture. The candidate must find the pattern, rule, or link between each item. Then they can use this knowledge to decide what comes next in the sequence. For example, there's a pattern 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 shapes are given, and you are asked to guess the 5th shape. For that, you can't do that unless you discover the pattern. So the first challenge is to discover the pattern, that what pattern is being followed when we are moving from the picture 1 to the picture 2, and then there's a transition from the picture 2 to the picture 3, and then from the picture 3 to the picture 4. So this transition will not be haphazard. It will be based upon some pattern, and you have to discover that pattern. They can then use this knowledge to decide what comes next in the sequence. Sometimes the candidate must read a statement or series of statements and then choose the logically correct answer. You will be reading a series of statements, and in the light of those statements, you will be choosing a logically correct answer. Next is verbal reasoning or reading comprehension. This is where the students, they feel quite at home because they feel that this is the thing they are quite familiar with, and sometimes they tend to underestimate it. Remember, this is another very challenging portion, and students should take it very seriously. Verbal reasoning is different from analytical reasoning. What is verbal reasoning? Let's see. Verbal reasoning seeks to understand and reason out using concepts framed in words. That is the difference, basic difference between quantitative reasoning, analytical reasoning, and verbal reasoning. Here, we are dealing with words, and the concepts, they are framed and shaped in words. And we have to understand and reason out while using those concepts which are framed and shaped in words. Not in mathematics, not in geometric equations or sets or things like that. Just we are dealing with words, and the concepts, they are framed in words which we have to discover, decipher, and to deal with. It aims at evaluating ability to think logically. Logic is everywhere. Remember, logic, all these tests which are psychometric in nature, or subjective in nature, or objective in nature, because this is how, and the competencies and skills which are assessed during this exam, in all these domains, logic plays very important role, because later on, why logic is stressed so much, the reason is very simple. Because both MPhil and PhD, these are research oriented programs, and the purpose of these two programs is to prepare people, train people, groom them for research. And in research, logic plays pivotal role. If your mind is not logical, you can be anything but a good researcher. So it aims at evaluating ability to think logically rather than at simple fluency or vocabulary recognition. Remember, in reading comprehension, simple reading fluency or vocabulary recognition would not suffice. You have to go far beyond that. This will be a great help, but remember, this will not be the ultimate help. You have to go far beyond this basic requirement. Reading fluency, reading understanding of the text, vocabulary recognition, it will help you, but your goal is not just vocabulary recognition. You have to go beyond that. The basic purpose of verbal reasoning is to assess reading comprehension. Simply understanding the vocabulary and phrasing used is not enough. So reading comprehension is a great competence, it's a great skill, it's a great comprehension. And for students, those who take these exams, these tests, for them it is very important that they should make intensive practice of this verbal reasoning and reading comprehension. Moving on. English section. Here we don't have any shortcut. Remember, your vocabulary, your knowledge, your grammar, your syntax, everything which is assessed, that you acquire over a period of time. Nothing which is checked here can be acquired overnight, and shortcuts which are usually adopted by the students, they lead simply nowhere. No shortcut. Avoid memorizing vocabulary lists, please. I advise my students, don't start memorizing vocabulary lists. It is very childish approach, very unscientific, unprofessional approach, because these vocabulary lists are highly decontextualized, isolated, fragmented ideas. They will not help you, they will do no good, and instead will burden you psychologically. So committing vocabulary lists to memory will simply be a psychological liability for you. Try a few novels. It is far better to read good literature, preferably by British authors. Also try to read columns and op-ed pages of English dailies. Puzzles like anagrams and crosswords help you increase your vocabulary. Try to solve at least one puzzle a day. So you have to mature all these things. You have to digest all these things cognitively, and the amount of knowledge which you acquire, it should stretch over a period of time. Only then you can solidify your understanding, and you can claim that you know vocabulary or your grammar is sound. So in this section, you have to be proficient in grammar. That is your basic grammar, tenses, conditional, subjunctive, sequencing, voice, narration, all these things, conditionals, etc. Vocabulary. And in vocabulary you have to be vigilant about suffixes, that means prefixes, parts of speech, and synonyms, antonyms, fill in the blanks. So these are the major aspects of English section. This vocabulary you should acquire over a period of time. There are books, there are lists. There is no harm in using those books and going through those lists, but simply sitting down and just memorizing the vocabulary lists without any context will not help you. So this is where you have to be quite careful. Next. Now, whatever I said up till now, it applies both to GAT General as well as the university test, which is conducted by some of the universities, because they also patron their entrance test on the GAT model. But now, what I'm going to discuss right now onward, from linguistics onward, this is pure subjective portion as well as objective aspect of the test. But from now onward, we are done with that quantitative reasoning and analytical reasoning and all those things. Now we are purely in the domain of linguistics and literature. Now, in linguistics and literature, please remember the major branches which you have to cover. They are phonetics and phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, pragmatics, discourse, sociolinguistics, psycholinguistics, grammar and rhetoric, and research. The last two I added after so much deliberation, because usually, as per HEC, as per NTS syllabus, they have included up till psycholinguistics. They have left these last two, but I have deliberately added these last 2 points as well, because there are sometimes MCQs, grammar-based MCQs in university entrance test, both for MPhil and PhD, and some research related questions also. So these branches you have to prepare. You should have fairly good idea about phonetics. You should have fairly good idea about phonology. You should have fairly good understanding of morphology. Your knowledge of syntax should be substantial. Similarly, semantics, pragmatics, what are the major definitions of pragmatics? What are the main paradigms in pragmatics? What is the brief history of pragmatics? Who are the major writers in pragmatics? Same is the course with discourse. Same is the case with sociolinguistics. What are different fields, domains in sociolinguistics? And who are the main theorists in sociolinguistics? What are the major years of important developments in sociolinguistics or psycholinguistics, or for that matter in pragmatics and semantics? So these are the major fields and areas in which you have to be as much proficient as possible. I mean, the more the better. Now, when you will be preparing these areas, you have to prepare both subjectively as well as objectively. You must be able to write something in the form of a piece of a written piece, a piece of writing, a note. You must be able to discuss a concept, pragmatic concept or semantic concept or sociolinguistic concept at length. But you must also be able to have objective knowledge of certain important happenings and certain important developments in that field. So please prepare, if you are preparing for linguistics, prepare yourself both subjectively and objectively in these fields, plus research and grammar and rhetoric. There can be such certain questions. I have seen some papers in which there are certain questions about research, qualitative research, quantitative research, major paradigms about research, ontology, methodology, so on and so forth. So although this is no time to check the students for their knowledge of research, but sometimes in paper there are some tricky questions about research also, which you must be able to answer subjectively. Moving on to literature. In literature, the canvas is largely vast, broader. What you should prepare in literature: literary terms, allusions, literary movements, poetry, poets, drama, dramatists, novelists, prose writers, short story writers, criticism, critics, history of English literature, post-colonial, postmodern literature, literary techniques, and the last 2 points again, grammar and rhetoric as well as research. Now, this is maybe you are looking at too many points and you feel that this is going to be unmanageable. In fact, most of these things, they are mutually reinforcing. Literary terms, allusions, movements, poetry, poets, I mean, when you will be dealing with these concepts, you would discover yourself that most of these concepts are mutually reinforcing. So your knowledge will be mutually reinforced. So instead of taking it one very vast canvas, you can take it just like a mosaic of intersecting lines, and in which we have different, you can say, boxes within the boxes, and different spaces, outer space, inner space, and the things are mutually being reinforced. But again, if you are appearing for literature, your knowledge should be substantial about poetry, about poets, genres, literary movements, and techniques. You have to have sufficiently good idea about the early romantics, and about sometimes, for example, there is a poem, An Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard, written by Thomas Gray. Thomas Gray is not a very big name, he is not a very famous poet, but the elegy which he wrote, that is considered to be one of the finest elegies in English literature. So sometimes this happens that the work is very important, the writer is not very famous. So you have to be careful about such technicalities also. Similarly, 1066 is the year of Norman conquest of England. You must know 1066. What is 1066? William Caxton, those who introduced printing press in England. You must know who is William Caxton. Reformation, the year of Reformation, or the certain, you can say, certain technicalities, certain objective knowledge should be there in your mind. Lyrical ballads, the year of publication, what is the year of publication for the lyrical ballads, and things like that, so on and so forth. So when you are preparing yourself for literature, the advice is pretty much same, which I offered here for the linguistics students, that please prepare yourself substantially, and both subjectively as well as objectively. And this is where I say that there are no shortcuts. Here you cannot sit overnight and prepare yourself for last week. Yes, these, your time is very precious, you can use it, you can do something valuable, but these are the things which you should acquire over a period of time. General guidelines. Now this is very important. I have collected some points here for you. Time management is the key. We have seen people sitting. I have invigilated in such tests many times. I have seen people thinking, and getting stuck on one question. That would not lead you anywhere. If you don't know a question, please move on. Don't waste the time, because your time is measured, calculated. You have been given 120 minutes for 100 questions. So you don't have time to think excessively. If you don't know anything, move on. You always have the chance and the opportunity to come back if you get the answer later on. If you are successfully recalling, if you are successful in recalling an answer, you can always come back. Second piece of advice is very practical. I have learned it from experience, and this is for you. First attempt English portion, then quantitative reasoning, and last analytical reasoning. Remember, analytical portions takes too much time, because analytical reasoning is always very sustained. It is time taking. So this sequence is very important. First English portion, then quantitative reasoning, and lastly analytical reasoning. Number 3, if you don't know the answer to a question, leave it and come back to it if you have time. If you recall it, the same thing which is said just right now, you can always come back. Ensure long-term and repetitive practice. Practice under similar condition. This is very important. Please remember, decision to join MPhil or PhD is not just a random decision. People are researcher by nature, and everyone knows himself or herself. So it is not your one night dream that you wake up one morning and you decide, okay, I am applying for MPhil or I am applying for PhD. if you are seriously thinking to take your career path and you want to join MPhil and PhD, then please make a long-term practice for that. Start practicing, start preparing when you are in BS. That is the ideal. That is the ideal course of action. And practice under similar conditions. Please get some sample paper and sit down and take that test with proper timing and all those conditions that will help you to shed psychological burden on the real test day. You will not be having that stress or pressure. Number 5, in comprehension questions, read the questions before the passage. It's another practical piece of advice. Read the questions before the passage. Don't read the passage first. First, read the questions. It has dual benefit. Number 1, questions will give you some peep into the nature of the passage, some idea about the nature of the passage. Secondly, once you are done with the questions and you are when you are reading the passage, you will be better informed what you are actually looking for. You can reread the questions. I am not saying that if you read the questions beforehand, there is no permission to read the questions after that. You can always read the question again, but please start with the questions and then read the passage. Number 6, don't spend too much time on guessing. Just guess for some time and then move on. I am reinforcing this point. It's very important. Number 7, if you are having trouble answering any question, the most likely answer will be cannot say. In true false question, there is a third option, cannot say. So if you get stuck and you are unable to decide between the right true or false, then it is the most likely answer is cannot say. That means the third option. But again, it is no rule, but this is just it is very likely. If something as per the best of your knowledge is neither true nor false, so the best possible answer will be the third one, that will be uncertain or cannot say anything. Number 8, in analytical questions, concentrate on the situation. Draw tables, column for solving the question. Please take some rough papers with you. You can draw your table and columns and do whatever you want to do. That is your choice. You have some loose sheets with you, rough papers with you. You can use them, because analytical questions, they involve spatial reasoning. So for spatial reasoning, sometimes you need to draw tables and columns. So I give this advice to my students: whenever you go for NTS test or any such test, please have a loose sheet with you and make a request to the invigilators that I will be using it for the rough work, and they should have no objection. I never objected to any of the candidates. Rather, I felt happy if somebody brought that thing, and later on you can discard it. Multiple attempts, and last 2 pieces of advice: multiple attempts and clear your GAT beforehand. This is very, very practical advice. Please get your GAT test cleared beforehand. Do not pend it till the actual admission test of the university. So get your GAT test cleared, qualified beforehand, because your GAT test has a validity of 2 years. So if you can do that, that will help you not to depend on the last minute performance, and then you will be able to make even multiple attempts, and they will help you a lot. But if you just attempt your GAT and the university entrance exam on the same day, then you have bet too much on that one performance. And God forbid, if you fail your GAT on that day, then you have no chance until you apply next time, and that obviously will take time. So this is very advisable that you should qualify your GAT not through any university. You should qualify your GAT beforehand from the NTS forum, and once it is qualified, keep it with you. It will have validity of 2 years, and in the meanwhile you can apply anywhere. These are some of the books which I have shortlisted for you. There are many books, but these are really good, An Introduction to Language and Linguistics by Christopher Hall, The Study of Language, George Yule, A Short History of English Literature, Ifor Evans, A History of English Literature, Compton Rickert, my favorite, best book, and GRE Big Book, and ARCO, ARCO, GRE Cat Answers Real Easy Questions. So these books will help you. I hope my video will be useful for you. If you have any question or query, please put that in the comment. I would be addressing that. Thank you very much.